Been a while, hasn't it? I'm not going to get into explanations of where I've been in the video, but check the pinned comment for details. For now, we have a tradition to continue. I wasn't really feeling up to Dark Souls 2 this year, so let's go in a completely different direction. Can you beat Skyrim with only shields? The rules this time are pretty simple. I can only damage enemies with shields, no major glitches or exploits, no followers outside of required events, and I'll be playing on expert difficulty. Now, to address an elephant in the room immediately, I will need to make an exception for shouts in specific cases. There are a number of instances in this game where you're forced to use shouts to progress, and I'll be sure to point them out as they happen. It's also worth noting that this was done as part of a casual playthrough of Skyrim, so I'll be doing all of the DLCs and whatever random tasks take my fancy along the way. So we begin as always, as a prisoner. Caught in the middle of a civil war, the government has decided to try and take the head of our fair Captain America. Captain Skyrim. Luckily for us, today happens to be the annual end of the world scenario in the MCU, this time with a dragon flavour. So as chaos reigns from above, we set off with a band of rebels to escape. Unfortunately, we're going to have to rely a fair bit on rail off here, as the closest shield is a few encounters away, and even when we do get it, our damage is pitiful. Needless to say, we just kind of hung back and let our companions deal with the majority of the enemies for now, while trying to get some experience where we can. Now, really, I could just grind block levels on rail off here, but that would be really lame, so I'm not going to do it. We pick up the Warrior Stone and then set out for Whiterun. It's around here that the biggest problem of this run became apparent. Stamina. Shield bashing counts as a power attack, so requires stamina to use. And stamina recovers really slowly in combat. Add on how low our damage is, and that leads to a lot of running away. Now, I was smart enough to plan early on how to deal with this. So in Whiterun, we bribe this creep to leave a vendor alone, and in return we gain access to all of her vegetables for free. We also raid all the local farms for the vegetables they have in order to make some vegetable soup, aka the most OP food item in the game for us. See, you can shield bash as long as you have a single point of stamina remaining, and vegetable soup recovers 1 stamina a second for 12 minutes. Adding to that, we join the companions to gain access to Nada here, an expert level block trainer. We'll be checking back in with her from time to time whenever we can afford a boost. Now, we need to do something about this damage. Our target is in the ruins of Alfdund. Along the way there, we hit block level 30 and gained Power Bash. It's slower but more powerful strike. Not that it's really going to help us though, as Alfdund is a very high level area, and even the first dwarven enemy took all of a minute of non-stop bashing to take out. Needless to say, I'm not made of time, so for the most part I'm just going to be running through here, which is still easier said than done. But past the hordes of dwarven enemies, Falna and even a centurion, we find these two, who immediately begin fighting. I help out to make sure that Umana is the one that goes down first, letting us get the Targe of the Bloodied, a shield that applies a free HP for 5-second bleed debuff with every hit. I also unlock the shortcut for later and then go to see Jarl Barlin in Whiterun to get our quest rolling. Long story short, we're off to Bleak Falls Barrow, a Nordic crypt, to get a stone tablet. Along the way I tested our new shield out on some wolves. It's a bit slow, but certainly better damage than we had before. But it's the bandits that really showed the danger of the shield. See, every shield bash stuns an enemy, so with proper timing, the enemies never get a chance to hit me. Granted, that's only really applicable if it's a one-on-one situation, which isn't all too common. In the Barrow, we encounter our first minor obstacle: spiderwebs. See, our normal attacks can't actually hit them, but thankfully our Power Bash can. This allows us to smack a giant spider so hard it gets launched into the air, and then free Arvel the Swift. But the only thing swift about him is his demise. The small hallways of this crypt allow us to pretty easily funnel enemies into 1v1 situations, meaning combat for now is at least a breeze. But real talk here, I want to meet the person who thought it was a good idea to design these elaborate locked doors, then shove the password to them on the key to said door. Must have gotten a medal for Nordic security, that one. The Overlord at the end goes down slowly, but without too much of a problem, letting us take the Dragonstone back to Farengar and turn on the dragon encounters. Because Skyrim isn't Skyrim without constantly being harassed by overgrown flying geckos. Speaking of, it's time for our first dragon encounter. Turns out that dragons actually require us to use the power bash in order to stun them properly, which requires a little bit more careful timing, but once you nail it, it's just like any other 1v1 fight. After bonking it into oblivion, we steal its soul and gain the ability to shout. On our way back, some weirdos shout absolute nonsense across Skyrim, but somehow Jarl Balin knows exactly what they mean. Apparently we need to go and climb 7,000 steps in the middle of nowhere to talk to these old men. Why couldn't it be the world's tallest escalator instead? The troll at the top is relatively easy to stun lock. Okay, lesson learned. Well, second time's a charm. Arriving with the Greybeards, we have our first case of forced shout usage. No matter what you do here, you have to hit Angia with unrelenting force. Technically, with the use of glitches, you could skip this, but it won't actually matter in the end. We'll get into it later. So, we learn a few more shouts, and we get our next task. Retrieve a horn from Ustengrav. However, on our trip to restock on soup, we get approached by some interesting characters. Weird men in Lovecraftian-inspired armor trying to kill me? It's a problem for future me. Along the way to Ustengrav, I ended up encountering the Headless Horseman. I don't think I've ever met him before despite the hundreds of playthroughs I've done, so it was pretty cool. Anyways, more Nordic tombs and narrow hallways. You know how this goes by now. Sadly, our target was taken right under our nose, so we have to head off to Riverwood to find it. Our thief is Delphine here, who wants us to go and kill a dragon. Because of course she does. It's around now that I hit block level 50 and unlocked Deadly Bash, which gave us a 5 times multiplier on our bash attacks. As well as grabbing elemental protection, which helps us deal with mages a bit better. Adding on the Atronach stone, I'm pretty sure I'm 90% magic proof, and not a moment too soon. But you see...
A dragon! It's attacking!
Well, poor dragon barely got its skin on before we ripped it back off again. Beginning to think the shields are just a wee bit OP, but let's not dwell on that now. We have a party to attend. A Skrull Falmore party. We get our friend here to cause a distraction, and that lets us slip in undetected. Yep, they should just call me Solid Snake. We find the info we need and sprint back to Whiterun, where some powerful magic seems to have taken hold, smoothing the entire area and removing all the doors. I'm sure somebody will be along to fix that sooner or later, so off to Riverwood for our next objective. We're sent to find a man who is under the protection of the Thieves Guild, so we're gonna need to get in their good graces. This involves stealing a ring and framing somebody else for it. After learning our man's exact location, we get accosted by a mad chef, and then meet Esbern and safely return him to Delphine. He states that we need to go find Skyhaven Temple. Upon arrival, I find a free-for-all between a blood dragon, the Forsworn, and our 2 friends here. A few deaths later, and we're able to take the dragon out, leaving us with an easy victory versus the weakened Forsworn. As I went back to drop off some gear, I was enlisted to go fight some vampires. Sounds fun. We also found our good friend here to be a bit unwell, as she's trying to sweep up an invisible mess with an invisible broom.
Are you feeling sick?
Skyrim, am I right?
The finest cuts?
Back at the temple, we failed the challenge by using a dagger on ourselves. Okay, I'm joking. Cutscenes aren't a fail. Inside, we find out how to defeat Alduin and prevent the end of the world. But more importantly, we also find a new shield. Always handy to have a backup. Now to learn this shout, we need to ascend the throne of the world, which requires a lot more shout usage. But at least this time, it's on non-living things. And at the top, we meet Mario! Sadly, we're once again forced to use a shout, this time blasting Parthenax with fire before we can continue. It's also worth noting that even if we used glitches earlier to avoid previous instances, we would have had to do it here anyways, so it's a moot point. Parthenax tells us we need an Elder Scroll to continue. Best place to find one is Winterhold. But first, another dragon attack. This one was different, however, as it channeled a ghost to talk to me from beyond the grave. Now, I could save scum here and get a non-combat spell requirement, or I could just say I'm Dragonborn and use another shout, and I respect my time too much to do all the save scumming, so either way, we gain access to the college and the info we need. Septimus Cygnus is the scholar we're looking for. He sounds a little bit mad, but he does give us what we need to get into the chamber back at Alfstand. Good thing we left that shortcut open earlier. Why is it closed again? Oh no. You know what, screw this, I'm off vampire hunting. First stop, Fort Dawnguard to be officially sworn into duty. Then we have to go and clear out Dim Hollow Crypt. Vampires may be resilient creatures, but they aren't stun-proof. Add to that, this is another crypt, and you get the picture. A dozen or so corpses later and we find Serana, and she has an Elder Scroll. Best to get on her good side if we want to save the world and all. She only wants us to take her to her father, and oh dear, her father's a vampire. And a racist one at that. But his name's like Baron Blood or something like that. It's Harkon. I like mine better. Bad news is we get kicked out. And the vampires have an Elder Scroll. Bugger. It's around now that Isran wants us to put together a team. A Dwemer specialist and a troll trainer. Both are relatively easy to find and just as easy to convince to come to Fort Dawnguard. In the meantime, it seems that Serana has jumped ship and decided the best course of action is to walk right into the fortress full of vampire hunters. Good news though, she's willing to let us use the Elder Scroll. So long as we help her stop her father from blocking out the sun. First step, find a Moth Priest. It's around now though that I got a wee bit distracted. Oh, Bread, tell me your secrets. Now about that Moth Priest. Conveniently, it turns out one just passed through Dragon Bridge. Unfortunately, the vampires got to him first and turned him, but it's nothing that a good whacking won't solve. Sadly, this Elder Scroll wasn't actually of use. All it leads to is an uber powerful bow and well, do I look like Hawkeye to you? We need another one. Serana has an idea of where we can start. The one place her father would never look. The sun! Wait, no. The courtyard? That makes no sense. Well, as nonsensical as it is, we find a portal to another plane of existence just casually chilling in the family basement. Catch is we can't enter without either being a vampire or losing part of our soul. Not really giving me a good set of options here. Ah well, we sign our soul away to the devil and head on in to find Serana's mother. She's kinda trapped, so we go on a killing spree to free her. Granted, I have no idea how you can kill things in what is effectively a soul world, but let's not sweat the details. After freeing Valerica, Skyrim rears its ugly head again, with a dragon fight. But this time, I decided to have some fun. When Captain America throws his mighty shield, all those who oppose his shield must yield. Hey, I'm still only hitting things with a shield. It counts. Plus, I was kinda bored. New Elder Scroll acquired, and a pet dragon to boot. Well, we've got 2 scrolls down, may as well grab the 3rd. Back to Altdand. With the cube in hand, we head back to Cygnus. Oh, what in the name of Yog-Sothoth do we have here? Damn Hydra missionaries. You forgot your damn book! More bad news, sadly. The priest has gone blind. But he knows a secret method to go and talk to the moths, who can apparently read the scroll. By performing this sacred rite, we find the exact location of an ancient relic from a bygone age. This snow elf. Oh, and Oriel's bow, I guess. Just gotta lug around this big old jug of water and fight through hordes of enemies to get to it. Huh? Boss fight? What boss fight? Time for the final assault on the vampire menace. I'm gonna be real here. I really tried to finish off Harkon with the Captain America special, but his HP regen is just too high for it to work. So a good old shield bash ends the vampire menace once and for all. 1 threat down, 1 more distraction to go. Time to go and deal with Hydra. To make a very long story short, Hydra has been keeping an evil version of me in a pocket dimension housed inside a vaguely rectangular object. His influence is spilling into the real world, and he is claiming to be the real Captain Skyrim. Luckily, we have the power of Eldritch Nightmares on our side, which lets us confront our doppelganger. Sadly, he has a trick of his own. Disappearing. No, seriously, Maniac just despawned mid-fight. I waited here for a solid 10 minutes with the dragons just gradually getting slower and slower in the sky, before I eventually went to reload. Once he's done breaking the boundaries of the game though, it's another 1v1 fight. And one against a mage no less. Moving on. Back on track, we finally take the Elder Scroll to the front of the world to peer through time itself. Sadly, we clearly did something wrong as we appear to have peered into another dimension where Alduin forgot to set his alarm clock for the final battle. Seriously, that's 2 times now that things have just despawned, leaving me soft-locked. Never change, Skyrim. Never change. Peering into the right timeline this time, we learn Dragon Rend. Then we're hit with forced shout usage again. Alduin is completely invincible until you use Dragon Rend on him. But once he's vulnerable, it's stun lock time again. After depleting his health bar, Alduin leaves for the afterlife, leaving us looking for a way to follow him. Sadly, nobody's willing to help with a civil war ongoing, so it's time for Captain Skyrim to join up. This goes like this.
You're going to Fort Newgrad, Sunguard, Snowhawk, to the fort.
Granted, there are a few missions in between that are different, but it's mostly this. Well, that and destroying the entire city of Whiterun, but that's not important. Lesson learned. Never force Cap into a civil war. Especially if you're the government. Now then, time to trap a dragon. In a wooden trap. In a wooden building. Who wrote this plan? Oh yeah, it was me. Right. Well, thankfully this dragon's dumb and doesn't set the place alight. What's more, he's a traitor and willing to take us to Alduin. 1 more Nordic dungeon later, and we get into the portal to Sovngarde. Gotta admit, the afterlife looks a bit more blue than I thought. Oh well. We join up with some volunteers and have our last real forced shout usage, and a fair few at that, as we have to keep clearing the mist until Alduin arrives. As you would imagine, this is a 4v1, so Alduin stood absolutely no chance, especially against our mighty shield. With that, the world is safe once more, and Cap can retire. That was a fun, if a bit tedious run. Skyrim doesn't really lend itself to much in terms of challenge run opportunities, so I'll take what I can for now. But next time around, I think I'll pick something that's not as easy to trivialize by stun locking everything to death. But for now, it's February next, which means Pokemon. And about time too, since the rainy season is beginning, and believe me, there's too much water. You know, after saving this world, I feel like I need to make sure the next one is saved too. Oh, Elder Scroll, bring us a hero. And what happened then? Well, in Boston they say that the mushroom cloud grew 3 sizes that day.